Here's what happened, guys. One of our favorite podcasters, Tucker Carlson, got into a little debate with Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary about a big problem Americans are waking up to. Why are Americans forced to subsidize our tax-paying dollars for projects we don't agree with? Specifically in this situation, it's data centers, AI data centers, and more specifically, one project that has gotten a lot of attention is Kevin O'Leary's 40,000 acre plan in Utah. Now, I gotta give Kevin some credit because not all the 40,000 acres are going to be used for data centers. He clarified that in the debate. But it brings up an important conversation about America's future. Should taxpayers be forced to subsidize private companies in some way? And ultimately, which businesses hurt the most and benefit the most from these incentives, from these tax breaks? Is there an alternative future without taxes on businesses, which would be a major tax break for all businesses? Welcome back to the RD Week show. Happy Friday, guys. I want to share with you two clips from this debate that is really important to provide more context of a future with major tax breaks for all businesses. Wouldn't that be nice? What could that be like? And especially if, as you're a small business owner, thinking back to what would that be like for you to be able to have a major tax break? And let me share the first clip with you, talking about also that not only do we have to adapt to, not only do we need to adapt to the future, we could actually shape the future as small business owners. And I do believe America's future leaders are small business owners. And it's important to remember, how do we want to do business? What is, for us, I think going back to doing what is right over what is easy and convenient wins every time in the long term. So let me first share one of the clips. By the way, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show and leave a comment of what you think about that, of a future with major tax breaks for all businesses. And then, please continue to leave those comments. This helps to get the show out to more people, and it helps me to hire faster producers, so it doesn't take so long to get this up for you guys. Okay, here we go.
I don't fully understand it, that's for sure. Let me ask, though, about why taxpayers should have to pay for this if it's a private business and your tenants are some of the richest companies in the world. Why would taxpayers be required, as they now are, to subsidize this?
They don't necessarily have to do that. They just won't win any contracts. It's a competition.
But why are you getting tax breaks is my question.
Yeah, everybody, you go back and you say, what incentives can you give us to invest $15 billion in the first 1.5 gigs? That's what it takes. I have to go raise $15 billion.
Well,
that's just
okay, but anyone who starts a business, why should taxpayers have to pony up for that?
They don't. But
well, of course they do. If you're getting a tax break and they're not, they're making up the difference. There's a state budget.
Okay, that's no problem. That's no problem. I can build it in Texas. I can build it in
So it's important to think about that question that kept pushing, which is why should taxpayers subsidize for a private business? And I've shared that before here. How can we as a country move more towards free market capitalism rather than this crony capitalism where government and big globalist corporations are working together in order to create higher barriers of entry and make it more difficult for small businesses to be able to thrive in industries or disrupt industries? Because going back to who does this hurt the most in the business side of it, it's small businesses. It's clear. It's small businesses are last. That's been a theme over the decades. And yeah, you got Small Business Week or Shop Saturdays for small business, these little give-me's, these little carrots. But when we think about the big overall picture here, small businesses are last and are placed last. And so how can we get back to actually small businesses first? And then who benefits the most here is globalist corporations, ones that are already in the industry and are able to work with governments to create the best deals in order to get the most savings, if that's through a form of subsidies, in order to then be able to continue to build and grow as a company. And this, when it comes to subsidies, state subsidies, it really picked up. It was widespread after World War II. That's really when it picked up. So we're talking less than 100 years here of this type of method for economic development and for drawing companies into certain states. And so now what we have to ask ourselves here is this right? Is this right to continue down this path? Have we felt like our quality of life has gotten better overall in just the last 2 decades? Can we think about that now? Have we gotten to the point where we've gotten these massive amounts of messes that we got to clean up, like national debt being over $39 trillion, Gen Z being the most in debt generation for their age group in the history of the U.S., the depression crisis, the opioid crisis, obesity crisis, this loneliness epidemic? Is our quality of life overall as Americans, do we feel like it's improving? And the answer becomes clearer and clearer with each year that passes that it hasn't. And that we are experiencing right now massive change. We're experiencing the reactions to that, where things aren't working. And there is this sense that we feel of a chaos that is out there. And with chaos, what that can lead to is massive change, but we got to decide, is that massive change going to be positive for increasing the overall quality of life of Americans, or is it going to be negative? And we, as American people, get to shape that future. And as small business owners, I do believe America's future leaders are small business owners. And so we have to take that responsibility on and unite and move forward and be able to communicate clearly the truth of what's going on, which a lot of Americans are waking up to the fact that this happens, that their taxpaying dollars goes towards these subsidies and in the form of the tax breaks. And so when that comes up, it's now, okay, well, what's an alternative future look like? Well, it could look like, one thing is it could look like being able to reduce our tax codes massively, massive reductions here, because I've said it before, I believe we would be shocked at actually how much money is required to run an efficient government on a local level, to the state, to the federal level. We have noticed a lot of abuse of the system, a lot of corruption that is out there. As I said, I could create a compilation. Once I get a producer on, that might be an idea. Create a compilation of politicians saying how corrupt Washington, D.C. is. And then getting into this fraud that we're seeing on a state level, for example, in Minnesota, California, we know, it's obvious that the system is getting taken advantage of and is getting abused. And so with something that's been less than 100 years, it looks like it's time for a massive change here. And that could be in a form of an alternative future where we reduce the tax codes. Federal tax code, it's like over 4,000 pages. It is overwhelming to try to take time as an average American to look through that. Why can't we focus on simplifying the tax codes at average, so that just the American layman American who isn't an expert in tax law can actually take the time to really understand this? Because when we have informed citizens, then what can happen is we can shed light on a lot of the evilness that is out there. And there's a lot of evilness in our country, and light is the best disinfectant to be able to talk about the truth in order to then move towards making change. But we got to first be aware of what the truth is, because it can be uncomfortable to share the truth. It can be even shocking at times. But what it can do is give us peace and clarity of knowing where we have to now move towards for the future. And with this specifically, it's becoming clear that we got to look at subsidies and look at an alternative future where there aren't state subsidies for businesses. Because I'm going to share with you another clip here from this debate where Tucker makes a very important point relating to small businesses. So let me get this up for you guys. All right, here we go.
on the job
do
question.
that. You're doing it because there's a competition.
Well, I
People
run
want
I run a couple of businesses, and we're not getting any tax breaks. I think they're every bit as virtuous as data centers, but I'm not availing myself of that, and no one's offered. And I wouldn't take it anyway, because it's not the job of taxpayers to subsidize a private business.
it's a fair comment, but my job is to create a data center, create 2,000 jobs for long term, 10,000 manufacturing at the beginning or construction, and I'm obviously looking at multiple sites, and this won't be the last one I build.
May I ask 2,000 jobs? Okay, so relative to the size, the physical size of the project, which, as you noted, is multiple times the size of Manhattan, and the power draw at peak, this data center, your projections, will consume about as much energy as New York City does. But New York City provides almost 5 million jobs. And this project, by your own description, would provide about 2,000 jobs.
So it's important for us to think about this. For what does this make sense anymore for these subsidies? And are we really being able to allocate taxpaying dollars in the most effective way possible for being able to run our governments on a local, state, federal level? The answer is becoming clear that we absolutely have a lot of room for improvement here in how we are operating our country and running the country. And that is where small business owners have to hold our elected officials accountable. The conversation I've had shows me that there's so much potential in this country, and that the hardworking, decent Americans there are so many of us out there that want to be able to improve the overall quality of life of Americans. And that is where we have to continue to share the truth and talk about this and get this out to more people. Because when we're aware of what's going on for these problems, we can then figure out, okay, now what are the next steps moving forward? And one of them it's not crazy to say, is looking at the tax codes and seeing if it makes sense to have these massive tax codes on a federal level over 4,000 pages, and then you get into every specific state, and then you get into the local level with taxes like hospitality tax. And to think that the government isn't then going to, let's say for an example, hospitality tax in South Carolina, to not think that they're going to max out with the 2% is ridiculous to think about that. Like, they're going to push it for the most amount of taxes for something like a hospitality tax, because then you have the budget to work with. So we've gotten into this parasitic economy, and it's flowed into all these other areas of our society. And so we have to get back to discipline, hard work, putting in the effort, doing what is right, communicating with integrity, doing what is right over what is easy and convenient. And we got to get back to that and celebrate that in our society. And it starts with us first understanding the truth, and then from there, taking the actions to lead by example. And to lead by example for our communities, because small businesses are the heart of the economy, the character of these cities and towns across America. When there isn't a thriving small business ecosystem in a town, and you just have one big business, what happens once that big business leaves? We've seen so many of those stories of towns shuttering and starting to just deteriorate and collapse. And I don't want to see that in our country. I don't want to be driving across the country and just seeing these rundown buildings and these ugly buildings and these desolate towns. No. And this movement is about turning America's future into a small business renaissance. It is reminding ourselves small businesses are the heart of the economy, and that we have to think about this now. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this, of having a future where there are major tax breaks for all businesses, meaning we shrink our tax codes on multiple levels. What would that do for your stress levels? What would that do with the overwhelm, the day-to-day operations? Because as I said before, I believe we would be shocked as to actually how much money it really takes to run our government effectively. And my guess is it's much lower than the current budget that we have. So if you're a small business owner who wants to connect with other small business owners in person to shape the future of our country, you can join us for A Future Fest in Charleston, South Carolina. This is where you can register at afuturefest.com. Happening January 14th, 15th, 2027. The plan is to have over 300 small business owners coming together across industries, and we can get perspectives of different perspectives. You can start to notice similar patterns, which can then better prepare you for your challenges you're dealing with in your business, but better prepare you for the chaos in the future, because stability is the antidote to chaos. So hope you have a great weekend, and then I will see you guys next week.